The Galactic Council chamber floated in the void between stars, a crystalline monument to 10,000 years of peace. Its walls, carved from quantum-locked neutronium, had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, the birth of interstellar law and the gradual taming of a once savage galaxy. But tonight, those ancient walls would hear words that would shatter everything. In the beginning there was chaos. Then came order. And from the deepest, darkest corners of that chaos, from the worlds where survival was not a privilege but a blood-soaked necessity, would emerge the species that would make the galaxy remember what fear truly meant. The assembled representatives of the Galactic Council's 347 member species shifted restlessly in their bioadaptive seats. Crystalline beings from the methane storms of Proxima 7 hummed in frequencies that made reality tremble. The hive minds of the Outer Rim projected collective consciousness across the chamber in waves of telepathic static. Ancient gas cloud entities, being so old they remembered when stars were young, drifted in specially maintained atmospheric pockets, their thoughts moving at the speed of geological time. At the center of it all stood High Arbiter Zaxphaline, her 6 eyes focused on the holographic display that hung suspended before them all. The image showed a small blue-green world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star in what the galactic databases had catalogued as Sector 7G. A backwater, a footnote, a cosmic afterthought. Honored delegates, Zaxphaline's voice resonated through the chamber's universal translators, each species hearing her words in their own tongue, their own emotional context. We have received troubling intelligence. The word troubling sent a ripple through the assembly. In 10,000 years of galactic peace, very little had been deemed truly troubling. Wars were settled through economic sanctions. Territorial disputes were resolved through careful negotiation. Even the most aggressive species had learned to channel their violent impulses into regulated combat sports and virtual reality experiences. The galaxy was civilized. The galaxy was safe. The galaxy was controlled. The report's Zaxphaline continued, her lower arms manipulating the holographic controls while her upper hands gestured toward the blue world. Comes from our deep space reconnaissance probe, Eternal Vigilance. 3 cycles ago, this probe detected signs of industrial civilization on the 3rd planet of this system. A low murmur echoed through the chamber. New civilizations were always cause for celebration. Another species to welcome into the galactic community, another unique perspective to add to the Council's collective wisdom. However, and here Zaxphaline's voice took on a darker tone, preliminary scans have revealed anomalies. The holographic display shifted, zooming in on the blue world. Continents became visible, vast stretches of green and brown and white, veined with the silver threads of rivers and the dark blue arteries of seas. It looked peaceful, beautiful, even. And then the data streams began to appear. Temperature readings, variable, extreme, atmospheric pressure, fluctuating, dangerous, seismic activity, constant, violent, weather patterns, chaotic, destructive, magnetic field, unstable, deadly. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. This wasn't just a world with life, this was a world actively trying to kill that life, every moment of every day. The species inhabiting this world, Zaxphaline continued, her voice barely above a whisper, appear to have evolved under conditions that would be considered uninhabitable by 97% of known galactic civilizations. From the back of the chamber a voice rose above the growing murmur of concern. It belonged to Prophet Hfy, one of the ancient seers whose species had developed precognitive abilities over millions of years of evolution. The seers were revered throughout the galaxy. Their predictions had prevented 3 major wars and had guided the Council through the Great Plague of the 42nd millennium. High Arbiter, Prophet Hfy's words seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, a quality that made even the most hardened Council members uncomfortable. I must speak. The chamber fell silent. When a seer demanded to speak, the galaxy listened. Hfy rose from her meditation pod, her ethereal form seeming to flicker between dimensions. Her species had long ago transcended physical form, existing as pure consciousness housed in quantum mechanical shells. When she spoke, reality itself seemed to lean in to listen. I have seen this world in my visions. she began, her voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. I have seen the species that crawls across its surface, fighting every moment for survival against a planet that seeks their destruction. The holographic display shifted again, showing thermal scans of the world's surface. The delegates could see vast temperature variations, deserts that could melt steel next to ice caps that could freeze gases solid. They could see massive storm systems that dwarfed anything in their own climates, volcanic eruptions that would sterilize entire continents on their homeworlds, and earthquakes that would crack their carefully constructed cities like eggshells. The species, Hfy, continued, her form growing brighter as the prophecy took hold, has been forged in fire and ice, in poison and plague, in earthquake and hurricane. They are not simply alive, they are the ultimate expression of survival itself. Surely, interrupted Counselor next to Tyron, his crystalline form chiming with skeptical harmonics, any species developing under such conditions would be primitive, barely sapient. How could they possibly pose any? They have achieved nuclear fission. Zaxthalan's voice cut through the counselor's objection like a blade. They have split the atom. They have touched the power of stars. The silence that followed was deafening. Nuclear weapons were not unknown to the galaxy. Indeed, most civilizations had developed them at some point in their technological evolution. But they had also learned to control them, to regulate them, to ultimately abandon them in favor of more civilized means of conflict resolution. The image on the holographic display shifted once more, showing a planetary surface dotted with massive craters, scars in the earth where these creatures had turned their starfire against themselves. They have used these weapons, Zaxthaline continued, her voice heavy with disbelief, against their own species, multiple times. And yet, they continue to thrive. Prophet Hfy's form pulsed with an inner light that seemed to draw all attention to her. I have seen their future, honored delegates. I have seen what they will become. The chamber held its breath. They call themselves humans, she said, and the words seemed to hang in the air like a curse. And they are death incarnate. A wave of nervous energy rippled through the assembly. Several of the more sensitive species began to show signs of distress. Bioluminescent patches flickering in distress patterns, telepathic projections becoming chaotic, atmospheric beings condensing in anxiety. In my visions, Hfy continued, her voice growing stronger, more urgent, I have seen them spread across the stars like a plague. I have seen them turn their death world adaptations against civilizations that have known peace for millennia. I have seen them treat the vacuum of space as if it were merely another hostile environment to be conquered. Impossible, scoffed Counselor of Aximotar, his biomechanical appendages clicking in dismissal. No species could survive in space without proper environmental controls. The radiation alone, they bathe in radiation on their homeworld. Hfy's voice cut through his objection like ice. Their star bombards them with enough hard radiation to sterilize most of our colonies. And they consider it pleasant. The holographic display showed solar activity charts, radiation measurements that made several delegates physically recoil from their seats. The levels were indeed lethal to most galactic life. Furthermore, Prophet Hfy continued, her prophecy gaining momentum like an avalanche. They have weaponized everything. Everything. Their agriculture is based on toxic plants that would poison us. Their entertainment involves simulated combat that would traumatize our warriors. Their children's games prepare them for warfare that would shatter our armies. Counselor Zephion Teth, representative of the peaceful harmony world, stood with his 4 arms spread in a gesture of disbelief. Surely you exaggerate, Prophet. No species could be so uniformly violent. The holographic display shifted to show cultural data streams, images and information that the deep space probe had managed to intercept from the planet's primitive communication networks. The delegates saw sports where armored giants collided at tremendous speeds for entertainment. They saw fictional stories where individuals fought against impossible odds and emerged victorious through pure determination. They saw children playing with toy weapons, learning strategy and tactics as naturally as breathing. But most disturbing of all, they saw history. A history written in blood and fire, in conquest and survival, in a species that had climbed to the top of their world's food chain not through cooperation or harmony, but through sheer, relentless, unstoppable aggression. They are not evil, Prophet Yuth Kamal al clarified, her voice becoming almost gentle. They are simply inevitable. They are what happens when a species is forced to become perfect predators in order to survive. They are evolution's answer to the question, what is the ultimate survivor? High Arbiter Zax Thulin processed this information with the cold logic of her species. Prophet, what do your visions show us of first contact with these humans? The seer's form flickered, and for a moment every delegate in the chamber could swear they felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. I see two paths, she said slowly. In one we approach them with caution, treat them as the dangerous species they are, and perhaps we can find a way to coexist. And the other path? Zax Thulin asked, though her voice suggested she already knew the answer would be unpleasant. In the other, Prophet Yuth Kamal's voice became a whisper that somehow filled the enormous chamber. We approach them as we would any other primitive species. We underestimate them. We dismiss them as backwards and violent and worthy only of our pity or our condescension. The silence stretched for long moments. And then, prompted Counselor Next Iran. Prophet Yuth Kamal's form blazed with an inner fire that made the chamber's lighting seem dim by comparison. When she spoke, her words carried the weight of absolute certainty. And then the sky turns black with their ships. The chamber erupted in noise, delegates arguing, questioning, demanding more details. But High Arbiter Zax Thulin raised her 6 arms for silence, and gradually the chaos subsided. Prophet, she said carefully, you speak of visions and possibilities. But we deal in facts and decisions. What do you recommend? Yuth Kamal's form began to fade as the prophecy released its hold on her. Quarantine. The system, she said with her last coherent words. Mark it as forbidden space. Let them develop in isolation until they either destroy themselves or transcend their violent nature. And if they don't destroy themselves? Asked Counselor Vaxmiltar. The prophet's final words seemed to come from across vast distances. Then pray to whatever gods you believe in that when they come for us, they remember mercy. With that, Prophet Yuth Kamal's form dissipated entirely, leaving only the faint ozone scent that always accompanied a completed prophecy. The chamber fell silent once more, delegates processing what they had heard. Finally, High Arbiter Zax Thulin called for a vote. All those in favor of establishing a quarantine zone around System 7G, 12 hands, claws, tentacles, and energy projections rose in support. All those opposed, 335 delegates voted against the quarantine. The motion failed by an overwhelming margin. Counselor Next Iran rose to address the chamber. Honored delegates, we cannot allow fear and superstition to guide our decisions. The Galactic Council has successfully integrated thousands of species, including many with violent histories. These humans will be no different. A wave of agreement rippled through the assembly. The logic was sound, the precedent clear. The galaxy had faced aggressive species before and had always found ways to civilize them, to channel their energies into productive pursuits. I propose, Next Iran continued, that we proceed with standard first contact protocols. We send an ambassadorial vessel to make peaceful contact to welcome them into our galactic community and to begin the process of civilization and integration. The vote was swift and decisive. 346 delegates voted in favor. Only High Arbiter Zax Thulin abstained. As the council session ended and delegates began filing out of the chamber, discussing the exciting prospect of another new species to welcome into their peaceful galaxy, none of them noticed the small monitoring station that had been silently observing their proceedings. Deep in the outer rim of the Sol system, beyond the orbit of Pluto, human Deep Space Station Omega-7 had been tracking the alien vessel that had been studying Earth for the past 3 months. The station's advanced sensors had detected the quantum-encrypted transmissions being sent back to the crystalline structure hanging in space between the stars. Commander Jackson Hayes stood before the main view screen, his weathered face impassive as he watched the alien ship power up its faster-than-light drive. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Commander Rivera from the communications console, "we've finished analyzing their transmission patterns. The encryption is sophisticated, but our AI systems were able to piece together fragments." "What did they learn about us?" Hayes asked. "Everything, sir. Climate data, geological surveys, cultural intercepts from our global communication networks. They know about our weapons, our history, our nature. Hayes nodded slowly. He'd expected as much. Humanity had been aware of the galactic community for nearly 2 years now, ever since their deep space telescopes had detected the massive artificial structures and energy signatures that could only mean advanced alien civilizations. The official policy had been to maintain radio silence, to observe and learn before revealing themselves. Apparently that policy had just become obsolete. And their response? Hayes asked. Lieutenant Commander Rivera consulted her datapad, her expression grim. Based on their behavior patterns and the duration of their council session, our analysts believe they've decided to make formal contact. Standard first contact protocols, Hayes mused. Which means they're going to approach us like we're just another species to be catalogued and civilized. Yes, sir. Hayes turned away from the view screen and walked to his command chair. As he sat down, he activated the emergency communication channel that would carry his words directly to the Unified Earth Defense Council. This is Commander Hayes, Deep Space Station Omega-7, he said into the microphone. Message for the Council. Package confirmed. The neighbors are coming to visit. Recommend immediate implementation of Protocol 7. He paused, looking out at the stars that had suddenly become a much more dangerous place. And may God help them when they realize what they've just invited to the galactic neighborhood. 3 light-years away, the Galactic Council's ambassadorial vessel Harmony's Dawn began its journey toward Sol System. Its crew confident in their mission of peace and their ability to bring another primitive species into the fold of galactic civilization. They had no way of knowing that their every movement was being tracked by a species that had spent its entire evolutionary history learning to hunt predators. They had no way of knowing that Earth's seemingly primitive technology was the result of deliberate misdirection, designed to make any observers underestimate human capabilities. Most importantly, they had no way of knowing that they were not traveling toward a primitive world ready for uplifting. They were traveling toward a trap that had been 10,000 years in the making. Behind them, Prophet Yith-Kamal's warning echoed through the cosmic void, and then the sky turns black with their ships. The prophecy had begun. The GCS Harmony's Dawn dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Sol System with the graceful precision of a civilization that had perfected faster-than-light travel when humans were still discovering fire. The vessel itself was a marvel of galactic engineering, a kilometer-long crystal ship that seemed to bend light around its bioorganic hull, its surface shifting through colors that had no names in any human language. Ambassador Kel'Thuzar'ain stood on the ship's observation deck, his 4 eyes tracking the primitive radio signals that emanated from the third planet like electromagnetic chatter. His species, the Veltar, had been chosen to lead this mission because of their reputation for patience and their ability to communicate with less developed civilizations. Fascinating, he murmured to his aide, Sub-Ambassador Quintaleva. Their communications networks are remarkably dense for such a young species. Indeed, Ambassador, Quintaleva replied, her own analysis systems processing the flood of data streaming from Earth, though I must note some peculiarities in their transmission. Such as, well, sir, approximately 37% of their communication bandwidth appears to be dedicated to what they call entertainment. However, our content analysis suggests that much of this entertainment consists of detailed simulations of warfare, survival scenarios, and conflicts between their own species. Ambassador Kel'Thuzar'ain's primary arms gestured dismissively. Primitive aggression fantasies, quite common among developing species. They use fictional violence as a way to process their natural territorial instincts without actual bloodshed. Yes, sir. However, Quintaleva hesitated. Speak freely, Sub-Ambassador. The level of detail in these simulations is extensive. They appear to have modeled every conceivable form of conflict, from individual combat to planetary warfare to something they call mutually assured destruction. Kel'Thuzar'ain paused in his examination of the sensor data. Mutually assured destruction. Yes, sir. They have created weapons capable of rendering their entire planet uninhabitable, and they have built their geopolitical strategies around the threat of using them. And yet they haven't used them. Not recently, sir. Though historical analysis suggests they have used primitive versions of these weapons against each other in the past. The ambassador processed this information with the analytical detachment of his species. Concerning, but not unprecedented. Several of our current council members went through similar phases during their development. The key is to approach them with understanding and guidance. To show them a better way, Harmony's Dawn continued its stately approach toward Earth, broadcasting standard first contact protocols on all frequencies. The message was simple, translated into mathematical concepts that any technological civilization should be able to understand. We come in peace. We wish to communicate. We represent a galactic community that welcomes all sapient life. What Ambassador Kel'Thuzar'ain couldn't know was that Earth had been listening to these same protocols for nearly 2 years, ever since their deep space monitoring stations had first detected the galactic community's existence. Human cryptographers and xenolinguists had long since cracked the basic mathematical framework of galactic standard communication. They knew exactly what the approaching ship was saying. They also knew exactly how to respond. The first indication that something was wrong came 12 hours later, when the alien vessel was still 3 days out from Earth at standard approach speeds. "Ambassador," reported Navigation Officer Hextalorth from her bioneural interface, "I'm detecting anomalous readings from the inner system." "What sort of anomalies?" "Mass displacement signatures, sir. Large ones. It appears that several objects have moved." Kel'Thuzar'ain's species had evolved from prey animals, and his instincts for danger were highly developed. The sensation that crawled up his spine now was one he hadn't felt since his youth on the predator-filled worlds of his homeworld. "Show me," he commanded. The main display shifted to show a tactical overview of the Sol system. At first glance, everything appeared normal. 9 planets orbiting a yellow star, asteroid belts and gas giant moons arranged in the patterns that their long-range observations had established. But as the display updated with real-time sensor data, the anomalies became clear. "These readings can't be correct," Kel'Thuzar'ain muttered. "According to this, several of the larger asteroids in the belt have changed position by thousands of kilometers." "Yes, sir," Hextalorth confirmed. "And there's something else. We're detecting massive energy signatures from the 4th planet. It appears to be inhabited." "Impossible. Our long-range surveys showed Mars to be a dead world." "Not anymore, sir." The display zoomed in on Mars, and what they saw made Ambassador Kel'Thuzar'ain's blood run cold. The red planet's surface was covered with a geometric pattern of structures that definitely hadn't been there 3 months ago. Massive domed cities connected by enclosed transport tubes, industrial complexes that covered entire continents, and orbital installations that registered energy outputs comparable to small stars. "Sub-Ambassador?" Kel'Thuzar'ain's voice was carefully controlled. "Please review our intelligence on human technological development." Quinteleva's data streams flickered as she accessed the reconnaissance files. "According to our surveys, the humans achieved nuclear fission approximately 80 of their years ago. They have primitive rocket technology capable of reaching their planetary moon." "The Ambassador, this can't be right." "What?" "Our files indicate they haven't even achieved controlled fusion reaction. But these energy readings suggest they're harnessing power sources comparable to our own antimatter generators." The ship's senior science officer, a methane-breathing Zilphorite named Drex Nautel, joined the conversation through the ship's neural communication network. "Ambassador, I've been analyzing the spectral signatures from both planets. The humans appear to have undergone a technological revolution that should have taken them centuries to achieve." "How long since our last detailed surveillance?" Kel'Thuzar'ain asked. 18 months, sir." The implications hit the Ambassador like a physical blow. A species that had advanced from primitive chemical rockets to apparent interplanetary colonization in less than 2 years. It was impossible. It violated every model of technological development that the galactic community had established over millions of years of observation. Sir Hextalorth's voice carried a note of alarm that made everyone on the bridge focus their attention on her station. "I'm detecting incoming objects. Fast ones." The tactical display updated to show 3 small craft approaching from the direction of Earth. Their acceleration curves were unlike anything in the galactic databases. They appeared to be pulling nearly 30 gravities without any visible reaction mass, suggesting propulsion technology that rivaled some of the most advanced systems known to the Council. "Attempting to establish communication," reported Communications Officer Timebelesh. broadcasting standard peaceful intentions on all frequencies. The response came immediately, in perfect galactic standard. GCS Harmony's Dawn. This is the UES Cerberus, speaking for the Unified Earth Defense Council. You are entering sovereign human space. Please reduce your velocity and prepare to be escorted to a diplomatic meeting point. The bridge fell silent. Not only were the humans responding in their own language, but they were doing so with formal diplomatic protocols that suggested they had been monitoring galactic communications for some time. How do they know our language? Quinteleva whispered. More importantly, Keltazarain said grimly. How long have they been listening to us? The lead human escort vessel, the Cerberus, pulled alongside Harmony's Dawn with a precision that spoke of advanced sensor technology and navigation systems. Through the observation ports, the aliens could see their escorts for the first time. The ships were disturbing. Where galactic vessels were grown from biomechanical matrices or crystalline structures that emphasized harmony with space itself, the human ships looked like they had been built for war. Angular hull designs that would deflect energy weapons, armor plating that could absorb tremendous kinetic impacts, and weapons systems that made even the most aggressive Council military vessels look like pleasure craft. Ambassador Drex Nanol's voice carried scientific excitement mixed with growing concern. I'm analyzing their hull composition. These ships are built from materials that shouldn't exist. Explain. Carbon nanotube matrices reinforced with what appears to be artificially created heavy elements. The structural integrity should be impossible given their apparent technology level. It's as if they've discovered manufacturing techniques that we haven't even theorized yet. The Cerberus transmitted coordinates for the diplomatic meeting, a space station in Earth's L5 Lagrange point that hadn't existed in any of their previous surveys. As Harmony's Dawn changed course to match the escort, Ambassador Keltazarain found himself reviewing Prophet Yithkamal's warnings with a growing sense of unease. The seer had spoken of humans as the ultimate survivors, forged by a death world into something beyond the galaxy's understanding. What if she had been right? What if the species they were approaching wasn't a primitive civilization ready for uplifting, but something far more dangerous? And what if they had just walked into a trap? The space station that appeared on their screens as they approached the rendezvous point answered all of those questions with terrifying clarity. It was massive, easily 10 kilometers across, and built with the same aggressive architecture as the escort vessels. But what made Ambassador Keltazarain's heart skip beats was the construction technique. The station wasn't built from manufactured components assembled in space. It was built from an asteroid. A single massive asteroid that had been hollowed out, reinforced and converted into a military installation in less than 2 years. The energy requirements alone should have taken decades to accumulate. By the eternal stars, Quinteleva breathed. They've built a fortress, Ambassador Time Balash reported. The humans are requesting permission to come aboard for the formal first contact ceremony. Keltazarain hesitated. Every protocol in the Galactic Diplomatic Manual said that first contact should take place on neutral ground. With careful environmental controls and extensive security precautions, the humans were suggesting that their representatives should be allowed onto the galactic vessel directly. The implications were clear. Either the humans were supremely confident in their peaceful intentions, or they were supremely confident in their ability to handle any situation that might arise. Given what he had seen so far, Keltazarain suspected it was the latter. Grant permission, he said finally, but maintain full defensive protocols. 30 minutes later, the airlock of Harmony's Dawn cycled open to admit the first human beings to set foot on a galactic vessel. There were 3 of them, and the first thing that struck Ambassador Keltazarain was their size. Humans were larger than most galactic species, not necessarily in overall mass but in their build. They moved like predators with a fluid grace that spoke of muscles evolved for pursuit and capture. The lead human introduced herself as Dr. Diana Foster, Director of Xenological Relations for the United Earth Defense Council. She was accompanied by a military officer whose title translated roughly to General of Strategic Defense, and a scientist whose credentials suggested expertise in fields that didn't exist in galactic databases. Ambassador Keltazarain, Dr. Foster said, pronouncing his name with perfect precision, on behalf of the human species, we welcome you to our solar system." The words were correct. The tone was diplomatic, but there was something in her eyes that made the ambassador's prey animal instincts scream warnings. These weren't the eyes of a primitive being grateful for contact with a more advanced civilization. These were the eyes of a predator evaluating potential prey. Dr. Foster Kelthazarian replied carefully. "We come in peace, representing the Galactic Council and our desire to welcome humanity into our community of civilized worlds." "How thoughtful," Dr. Foster smiled, and the expression somehow managed to be both perfectly diplomatic and utterly predatory. "We've been looking forward to this conversation for quite some time." "You have?" "Oh yes. We've been monitoring your communications for nearly 2 years now. Your council sessions, your technical databases, your military protocols. Fascinating reading." The ambassador felt his secondary heart stop beating. "You've been monitoring us?" "Of course. When we detected your observation probe studying our world, our first priority was to learn about the civilization that had sent it. We're naturally curious that way." General Rodriguez spoke for the first time, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "We were particularly interested in the debate that took place in your council chamber approximately 4 months ago, the one where a prophet warned about our species. I'm not sure what you—" "Ambassador," Dr. Foster's voice cut through his denial with surgical precision. "We know about Prophet Yothkamal's warning. We know about the vote to quarantine our system. We know that you dismissed her advice as superstition and fear." The human's eyes were fixed on him now with the focus of predators who had cornered their prey. Ambassador Kelthazarian's diplomatic training warred with his species' ancient survival instincts. "The prophet," he said carefully, "spoke of possibilities, not certainties. The Council chose the path of peaceful contact and mutual understanding." "Yes," Dr. Foster nodded. "You chose to approach us as if we were just another primitive species to be uplifted and civilized. As if we were children who needed guidance from our wise galactic elders." The way she said the word elders made it sound like an insult. "Dr. Foster," Ambassador Kelthazarian tried to regain control of the conversation, "the Galactic Council has successfully integrated thousands of species over millions of years. Our methods are proven, our intentions are peaceful, and our offer of membership is genuine." "Oh, I'm sure it is," Dr. Foster replied. "But here's the thing, Ambassador. We're not particularly interested in being integrated." The silence that followed was deafening. "I'm sorry?" Kelthazarian managed. "We've studied your galactic community quite thoroughly." The human scientist Dr. Chen spoke for the first time. "Your council, your laws, your enforcement mechanisms. It's all very orderly." "Order is the foundation of civilization," the ambassador replied automatically. "For you, perhaps. But you see, humans have a rather different perspective on order. We tend to view it as optional." General Rodriguez stepped forward, and something in his movement made every alien instinct in Kelthazarian's body scream danger. "Ambassador, let me be very clear about something. Earth isn't interested in joining your galactic community. We're not interested in being civilized by species who think peace is the highest virtue and conflict is something to be avoided at all costs. We're interested," Dr. Foster continued, her smile becoming sharper, "in what you can teach us. Your technology, your star charts, your knowledge of other species. And in return?" Kelthazarian asked, though he was beginning to suspect he didn't want to know the answer. "In return," Dr. Foster said, "we won't do to your galactic community what your prophet feared we would do." The ambassador's blood turned to ice. Are you threatening us?" "Ambassador." General Rodriguez's voice was calm, professional, and absolutely terrifying. "We're not threatening anyone. We're simply explaining reality. You have a choice." "What choice?" Dr. Foster gestured toward the viewports, where the human space station hung against the stars like a promise of violence. "You can work with us as equals, sharing knowledge and technology freely, respecting our sovereignty and our right to exist as we choose." "Or," Kelthazarian whispered. Or Dr. Foster's smile became something that would haunt the ambassador's dreams for the rest of his life. "You can learn why your prophet was right to warn you about us." The meeting continued for another 2 hours, but Ambassador Kelthazarian would remember very little of the actual diplomatic discussion. His mind was too busy processing the fundamental shift in everything he thought he knew about the galaxy. Humans weren't a primitive species ready for uplifting. They were a predator species that had been watching, learning, and preparing. They had the technology to match or exceed galactic standards. They had the strategic thinking to plan for conflicts that hadn't even occurred yet. And most terrifyingly of all, they had the absolute confidence of a species that had never lost a war against anything that threatened their survival. As the human delegation prepared to return to their station, Dr. Foster turned back to the ambassador one final time. "Oh, an ambassador? When you report back to your council, please give Prophet Yuthkamal our regards. Tell her that her vision was absolutely correct." "Which vision?" Kel'Thazarin asked, though he dreaded the answer. Dr. Foster's final words followed him into nightmares that would last for years. "The one about the sky turning black with our ships." 3 days later, as Harmony's Dawn jumped back into hyperspace carrying news that would shake the galactic community to its foundations, none of the alien crew noticed the small, invisible objects that had attached themselves to their hull during the diplomatic meeting. Human nanotechnology had just hitched a ride to the heart of galactic civilization. The invasion had begun. And just as Prophet Yuthkamal had foreseen, the galaxy had walked willingly into the trap. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in chaos. For the first time in 10,000 years, the crystalline chamber rang with the sounds of fear, high-pitched harmonics from the crystalline choir, subsonic rumbles from the deep dwellers, and the chittering anxiety of 100 different species that had grown comfortable in their assumption of galactic peace. Ambassador Kel'Thazarin stood before the assembly, his 4 arms trembling as he delivered his report. The data streams flowing from his ship's sensors painted a picture that challenged everything the galaxy thought it knew about the nature of civilization itself. "Honored delegates," his voice cracked with strain, "I must inform you that first contact with the human species has revealed complications." High Arbiter Zaxthalin's 6 eyes focused on him with laser intensity. "The humans," Kel'Thazarin continued, "have been monitoring our communications for approximately 2 standard cycles. They are aware of our existence, our technology levels, and our political structures. They have developed countermeasures." "Countermeasures?" Councillor Nextarin's crystalline form chimed with disbelief. "Against what?" "We offered them peaceful integration. They refused." The chamber fell silent. In 10 million years of galactic history, no species had ever refused an invitation to join the Council. The benefits were too obvious, the advantages too significant, the alternative remaining isolated and primitive, too unappealing. "They refused?" High Arbiter Zaxthalin repeated. "On what grounds?" "They stated that they have no interest in being civilized by species they consider to be inferior." The word hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Inferior. No primitive species had ever considered the galactic community inferior. It was impossible. It was unthinkable. It was terrifying. Surely Councillor Vaxmultar's biomechanical appendages clicked nervously. They simply misunderstood our offer. Perhaps their translation protocols. "They spoke perfect galactic standard," Kel'Thazarin interrupted. "They have been studying our language for years. Their understanding was comprehensive." Prophet Yuthkamal materialized in the center of the chamber without warning, her quantum-conscious form blazing with an inner fire that made the assembled delegates shield their sensory organs. "I told you," she said, her voice carrying across dimensions. "I warned you, and you laughed." "Prophet." High Arbiter Zaxthalin's voice was carefully controlled. "Your warnings were considered. The Council voted. The Council voted with the arrogance of species that had forgotten what it means to fight for survival." Yuthkamal's words cut through the chamber like a blade. "You have awakened something that should have remained sleeping." "They're just one species," Councillor Nextarin protested. "One world. What possible threat could they pose to a galactic community of 347 civilizations?" Yuthkamal's form pulsed with prophetic energy. "Show them," she commanded. The chamber's display systems activated, showing real-time sensor feeds from the outer rim, monitoring stations. What the delegates saw made their blood run cold. Ships, hundreds of them, emerging from hyperspace at the edge of Council territory like ghosts materializing from nightmare. They moved with the purposeful precision of a military force that had planned this operation down to the last detail. "Impossible!" whispered Counselor Hfy. They don't have faster-than-light capability. Our intelligence showed primitive chemical rockets. Your intelligence, a new voice spoke from the chamber's communication systems, was exactly what we wanted you to see. Every delegate in the chamber froze. The voice was human, speaking perfect galactic standard with an accent that somehow managed to sound polite and threatening at the same time. My name is Admiral Catherine Yang, commander of the 1st Human Expeditionary Fleet. I am speaking to you from the bridge of the UES Retribution, currently positioned approximately 15 light-years from your council chamber. Impossible, High Arbiter Zaxtheline breathed. There are no ships on our sensors. Of course there aren't. Admiral Yang's voice carried a note of amusement. Did you really think we would announce our arrival? The tactical displays updated, showing massive signatures appearing out of nowhere as human stealth systems disengaged. Ship after ship materialized on the screens, vessels that dwarfed anything in the galactic databases, built with the same aggressive architecture that had disturbed Ambassador Kel'Thazarin. But these weren't diplomatic vessels. These were warships. You're detecting approximately 1/10 of our actual fleet, Admiral Yang continued conversationally. The rest are maintaining stealth protocols pending the outcome of this conversation. What do you want? High Arbiter Zaxtheline managed to ask. What we've always wanted, came the reply. Knowledge, technology, resources. The difference is, we're no longer asking for your permission to take them. Prophet Yethkamal's form blazed brighter. I see it, she whispered. I see what comes next. What? Demanded Counselor Nextaron. What do you see? War, the Prophet replied. But not as we understand it. Not civilized conflict with rules and limitations and ceasefires. This will be war as the humans understand it, total, relentless, and without mercy for those who stand in their way. Admiral Yang's voice returned to the communication channel. The Prophet speaks truly. But understand, honored delegates, this doesn't have to be a war. We're prepared to offer you the same choice we offered your ambassador. Which is? High Arbiter Zaxtheline asked. Cooperation. Free exchange of technology and information. Mutual respect for sovereignty and territorial boundaries. A partnership between equals. And if we refuse... The pause that followed stretched for long moments. When Admiral Yang spoke again, her voice had lost all pretense of diplomacy. Then you'll learn why every species on our homeworld that competed with humans for dominance is now extinct. The chamber erupted in chaos as delegates realized the full implications of what they were hearing. The humans weren't just refusing to be civilized. They were positioning themselves as the civilization that would do the civilizing. You're talking about conquest. Counselor Vexmiltar's mechanical voice screeched across multiple frequencies. We're talking about evolution, Admiral Yang corrected. Natural selection on a galactic scale. The strong survive, the weak adapt or perish. It's the most fundamental law in the universe. We have fleets, Counselor Hfy declared. Military vessels from dozens of worlds you cannot possibly hope to. The communication channel filled with a sound that made every delegate's survival instincts scream warnings. It took them several seconds to realize what they were hearing. Laughter. Human laughter. Counselor, Admiral Yang's voice was patient, almost gentle. Let me explain something about human military doctrine. We don't fight wars to win battles. We fight wars to eliminate the possibility of future wars. The tactical displays updated again, showing new contacts appearing throughout Council space. Human ships were emerging from hyperspace near every major population center, every military installation, every critical infrastructure point in the galaxy. How long? High Arbiter Zaxtholine's voice was barely a whisper. How long? What? How long have you been planning this? Since the moment we detected your galactic community, Admiral Yang replied. Did you really think a species that had survived ice ages, volcanic winters, and planetary bombardment by space debris would approach a galaxy full of unknown civilizations without a plan? Prophet Yithkamala's form began to fade as the weight of her prophecy overwhelmed her consciousness. They're not invaders, she whispered with her final coherent words. They're what comes after us. The first shots of the war were fired 3 hours later, when the Crystalline Choir's home fleet attempted to engage a human squadron near their system's outer edge. The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it was over, the entire Hfy fleet had been reduced to expanding clouds of ionized gas, while the human ships remained completely undamaged. The recordings of that battle were transmitted across the galaxy, and what they showed shattered every assumption the galactic community had held about warfare. The humans didn't fight like civilized beings. They fought like the apex predators they had evolved to be. Their weapon systems bypassed shields that had protected galactic vessels for millennia. Their tactical coordination moved at speeds that biological reflexes couldn't match. Their ship designs incorporated lessons learned from millions of years of evolutionary arms races between predator and prey. Most terrifyingly of all, they fought with the absolute ruthlessness of a species that had learned, over hundreds of thousands of years, that mercy toward enemies was the fastest path to extinction. The war that followed wasn't really a war at all. It was a demonstration. One by one, Council fleets moved to engage the human forces. One by one, they were systematically destroyed with a clinical efficiency that spoke of careful study and meticulous preparation. The Deep Dwellers' massive bioships, capable of withstanding the pressure of gas giant cores, were torn apart by human weapons that operated on principles the galaxy had never encountered. The Harmony World's defensive networks, built around the assumption that no civilized species would target civilian populations, found themselves helpless against an enemy that recognized no distinction between military and civilian infrastructure. The Outer Rim's hive mind fleets, coordinated by collective consciousness that moved at the speed of thought, discovered that humans had developed artificial intelligence systems that thought faster than organic minds could process. Each defeat followed the same pattern: overwhelming human tactical superiority, minimal human casualties, and the complete destruction of galactic forces. But it was the aftermath of these battles that truly demonstrated what the galaxy was facing. Where other species would have stopped to negotiate, to offer terms, to seek some form of peaceful resolution, the humans simply continued. They didn't want territory. They took information. They didn't want resources. They took technology. They didn't want submission. They took everything that might be useful and left the rest as a warning to others. Within 6 months, the galactic community that had existed for 10,000 years had effectively ceased to exist as a unified entity. Some species retreated to their homeworlds and attempted to negotiate individual truces. Others attempted to flee to distant galaxies, only to discover that human exploration fleets were already establishing forward bases in Andromeda and beyond. A few tried to hide in the vast emptiness between stars, but human sensor technology, developed on a world where the ability to detect hidden predators was essential for survival, found them with ease. The final council session took place in a commandeered human vessel, with the surviving delegates seated around a conference table rather than in their ancient crystalline chamber. Admiral Yang sat at the head of the table, her uniform bearing the insignia of what humans called the Galactic Integration Authority. The irony of the name was not lost on those delegates who remained alive to appreciate it. "The terms are simple," she explained, her voice carrying the same clinical detachment she had shown throughout the campaign. "Full technological exchange, complete access to your historical databases, cooperation in establishing human administrative oversight for all former Council territories, and in return," High Arbiter Zaxthuline asked. She was the only original Council member still in her position. The others had either died in the fighting or been replaced by humans who had studied their species' administrative systems in detail. In return, Admiral Yang smiled with an expression that somehow managed to be both genuine and terrifying. "We let you live. We allow your species to continue existing. We even permit you to maintain your cultural identities and local governing systems. As long as we serve human interests," Councillor Nexteron said bitterly. "As long as you recognize reality," Admiral Yan corrected. "The age of galactic democracy is over. The age of human civilization has begun." Prophet Yithkamal, her consciousness now permanently linked to the quantum networks that the humans had allowed her to access, spoke from every communication system in the ship simultaneously. "I see the future," she said, her voice carrying across dimensions with the weight of absolute certainty. "I see a galaxy united under human leadership, expanding into new realities, conquering challenges that would have destroyed our civilizations." "You see slavery," Zaxthuline replied. "I see evolution, the prophet corrected. I see what we could have become, if we had possessed the courage to embrace survival instead of comfort. Admiral Yang stood, indicating that the meeting was concluded. You have 48 hours to transmit your acceptance of these terms to your respective homeworlds. After that, we begin Phase 2 of the integration process. And Phase 2 is? Zax Deline asked. Direct intervention. We stop asking for cooperation and start ensuring it. As the delegates filed out of the conference room, Admiral Yang activated a private communication channel to Fleet Command. Admiral Yang to Central Command. Operation Galactic Dawn is complete. All objectives achieved within projected timelines. The response came immediately. Acknowledged, Admiral. What's your assessment of long-term stability? Yang looked out at the stars that now belonged to humanity, considering her answer carefully. Some species will adapt. Some will resist. Some will try to hide or flee. She paused, watching as human ships established patrol routes that would ensure no corner of the galaxy remained outside their influence. It doesn't matter, we've learned their technologies, mapped their territories, and identified their weaknesses. Any future resistance will be manageable. And the next phase. Admiral Yang's smile was visible in her reflection in the viewport. We start preparing for contact with the neighboring galaxies. Our deep space probes have detected signs of civilization in Andromeda. It would be impolite not to introduce ourselves. Same protocols. Same protocols. Study them. Understand them. Approach them peacefully. Her smile became sharper. And if they make the same mistake this galaxy made, if they underestimate us because we're young and violent and uncivilized, well, she gestured toward the space where the Galactic Council chamber had once floated, now replaced by a human administrative complex that processed the integration of 347 former civilizations. The sky will turn black with our ships. In the depths of space, Prophet Ithkamal's consciousness expanded across the human quantum networks, seeing possibilities and probabilities flowing through dimensions that her species had never imagined. She saw human fleets spreading across the cosmos like seeds on the wind. She saw civilizations rising and falling under the weight of humanity's inexorable expansion. She saw a universe transformed by the simple, terrifying truth that the galaxy had learned too late. When evolution is forced to choose between cooperation and conquest, between mercy and survival, between civilization and dominance, evolution always chooses the predator. And humanity was the ultimate predator. The prophecy was complete. The sky had turned black with their ships. And the galaxy would never be the same.